Have you ever had a conversation with someone that left you feeling completely exhausted? You meet for coffee, spend an hour talking, and when you finally part ways, you feel as if your energy has been sucked dry, like someone reached into your soul, unplugged your battery, and walked away with it. The strange part? Nothing particularly bad happened. There was no argument, no conflict, no obvious reason why you should feel so drained. Yet you do. Now, think about the opposite experience, those rare interactions where you spend hours talking to someone and leave feeling more alive than ever. These conversations leave you buzzing with excitement, filled with fresh ideas, and energized as if you've been plugged into some invisible power source. It's as if these people give you energy rather than take it away. So why do some people exhaust us while others uplift us? What explains this profound difference in how people affect our energy levels? This question fascinated one of history's most brilliant psychological thinkers, Carl Jung. The Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology spent his life studying the hidden dynamics of human relationships. He believed that these energy exchanges weren't just about personality differences or social skills. Something deeper was happening, something rooted in our unconscious minds and the unseen psychological forces that shape our interactions. Jung believed that energy flows between people just like blood flows through the body. Every conversation, every interaction is an exchange of energy. In healthy relationships, this energy flows in a balanced, natural way. Both people feel equally heard, valued, and recharged by the interaction. But in unhealthy relationships, the energy flow is unbalanced. One person takes more than they give, leaving the other feeling drained. These energy vampires don't just drain us emotionally, they sap our very life force. To understand why this happens, we need to dive into Jung's concept of psychic energy, which he called libido. Now, when most people hear the word libido, they immediately think of Freud and sexual energy. But Jung saw libido as something much bigger. He believed it was the vital life force that fuels everything, our thoughts, emotions, creativity, and even our connections with others. He saw this energy as constantly moving through our minds, shaping our experiences and relationships. When our psychic energy is blocked, depleted, or misdirected, psychological problems arise. And one of the biggest sources of energy depletion? Other people. Jung realized that certain interactions could drain our psychic energy, while others could replenish it. But what exactly causes this? One major reason is projection. Jung believed that we all have aspects of ourselves that we don't want to face, things we feel ashamed of, afraid of, or uncomfortable with. Instead of acknowledging these hidden parts of ourselves, we unconsciously project them onto others. This means that sometimes, when someone drains your energy, they're not just talking to you, they're dumping all their unprocessed emotions onto you. Imagine a coworker who constantly criticizes your work, questions your decisions, and makes you doubt yourself. At first, you might think it's just their personality, but what's really happening? They are projecting their own self-doubt onto you. Deep down, they feel insecure about their abilities, but instead of dealing with those feelings, they offload them onto you, and you absorb them. No wonder you feel exhausted. Another reason some people drain us is emotional contagion. Have you ever noticed that moods are contagious? When you spend time around someone who is anxious, resentful, or constantly negative, you start to feel the same way. This isn't just an emotional reaction, it's a biological one. Scientists have discovered something called mirror neurons, which cause us to unconsciously mimic and internalize the emotions of those around us. This means that when you're around someone who is stressed, your own nervous system begins to mirror their stress. Think of it like second-on smoke. You don't have to be the one smoking to feel the effects. The same goes for emotions. If you're surrounded by negativity, your brain starts to process that negativity as if it were your own. This is why being around certain people feels draining. even if they haven't directly done anything to you. Their emotional energy is infecting your own. But perhaps the most powerful explanation for energy-draining interactions comes from Jung's concept of the shadow. The shadow is the hidden part of ourselves, the qualities we repress because they don't fit our self-image. If you see yourself as kind, your shadow contains your hidden capacity for cruelty. If you identify as rational, your shadow holds your irrational impulses. The problem? If we don't acknowledge these hidden parts of ourselves, they leak out in destructive ways. Some people haven't integrated their shadow at all. Instead of dealing with their own hidden emotions, they unconsciously act them out, and they do it in a way that forces others to carry the burden. Someone who refuses to acknowledge their anger might not lash out directly. Instead, they might use passive-aggressive comments, create unnecessary drama, or subtly undermine the people around them. Being around this kind of person is exhausting because you're not just dealing with what they say, you're also managing the weight of everything they refuse to face within themselves. Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The same applies to relationships. Until people acknowledge their unconscious patterns, these patterns will continue to drain everyone around them. So, who are the worst offenders? You've probably met some of them before. The victim is someone who has made powerlessness their entire identity. Nothing is ever their fault. They constantly share their problems, but they reject any solutions. They don't actually want help, they want pity. The victim drains your energy by pulling you into endless cycles of rescuing them, only to resist every effort you make to help. Then there's the narcissist, the person who demands constant attention, validation, and emotional labor. Conversations with them always revolve around them. They need admiration, but rarely give anything in return. At first, they might seem charismatic, even fascinating. But over time, their relationships become one-sided, with them taking all the energy while giving none back. And let's not forget the martyr, the person who constantly sacrifices for others, but uses their sacrifices as a form of emotional currency. They make you feel guilty for not appreciating them enough. Their unspoken message is always, "After everything I've done for you." The martyr drains you by creating a sense of debt, turning their so-called generosity into an emotional trap. So, how do you protect yourself from energy-draining people? The first step is awareness. Just recognizing these dynamics can help you detach emotionally from them. The second step is setting boundaries. You don't owe anyone unlimited emotional labor. You have the right to protect your own energy. But perhaps the most important step is working on your own shadow. The more you integrate your unconscious patterns, the less power others will have over you. When you understand your own emotional landscape, you become less susceptible to the projections of others. You recognize when someone is trying to dump their unprocessed emotions onto you, and you can choose not to accept them. At the end of the day, energy is everything. Who you give it to and who you let take it shapes the quality of your life. Surround yourself with people who lift you up. Protect yourself from those who drain you. Because your energy is your most precious resource, use it wisely. Energy-draining relationships can leave you feeling exhausted, confused, and emotionally depleted. Whether it's a friend who constantly demands attention, a family member who manipulates through guilt, or a colleague who always brings negativity into the room, these interactions take a toll on your well-being. Carl Jung, a pioneering psychologist, believed that the people who drain us aren't just random occurrences in our lives. Instead, he argued that our relationships mirror our inner psychological state. If you keep attracting the same type of emotionally exhausting individuals, it's worth exploring why. Jung's ideas suggest that these patterns aren't just coincidences, they stem from something deeper within us. When we find ourselves in repeated situations with people who take more than they give, there is usually an unconscious reason behind it. perhaps unresolved emotional wounds are pulling us towards similar dynamics, or weak boundaries are allowing these relationships to continue. Sometimes, the very traits we reject in ourselves show up in the people who exhaust us the most. To understand energy-draining relationships, it helps to recognize the common personality types that create them. One such type is the martyr, someone who constantly sacrifices their own needs, but then resents others for having needs at all. They may act as if they are doing everything out of love or duty, but deep down, they feel unappreciated and overburdened. Their unspoken expectation is that others should recognize their suffering and compensate for it. This passive form of control creates a sense of obligation in those around them, leading to guilt and emotional exhaustion. Another type is the manipulator, a person who subtly controls others using fear, guilt, or obligation. Unlike the martyr, who seeks validation through self-sacrifice, the manipulator directly influences how others feel and act to maintain control. They might make you feel responsible for their emotions, leaving you constantly second-guessing yourself. Over time, interactions with manipulators can make you feel drained because you are not engaging in an open and honest relationship. Instead, you're navigating an emotional minefield where hidden expectations dictate your behavior. There is also the general category often referred to as the energy vampire, a person who unconsciously drains the energy of those around them. This can manifest in several ways. Some energy vampires monopolize conversations, making everything about themselves. Others create unnecessary drama or crises, keeping people around them in a state of emotional turbulence. Some don't even need words. Their presence alone is enough to create an atmosphere of nervousness and fragmentation. Whether through constant negativity or sheer emotional neediness, these individuals sap the life force from those who interact with them. What unites all of these personality types is an imbalance in energy exchange. They take far more than they give, often without even realizing it. Yet, the important question isn't just why they behave this way, but why they continue to appear in your life. Jung believed that repeated patterns in our relationships often point to something unresolved within us. If you keep encountering energy-draining people, it's worth looking inward to understand what might be attracting them. One possible explanation is that unresolved emotional wounds make us susceptible to certain types of people. For example, if you grew up with emotionally unavailable parents, you might unconsciously be drawn to relationships with emotionally distant partners. The psyche has a peculiar way of recreating its past wounds, not to cause suffering, but in an attempt to heal. We are often attracted to familiar dynamics, even when they are unhealthy, because they feel recognizable. Unfortunately, this means we might unconsciously seek out people who reactivate our old pain rather than choosing healthier relationships. Another reason energy-draining people may continue to appear in your life is weak boundaries. If you struggle with saying no, setting limits, or prioritizing your own needs, you might be unintentionally signaling to others that your energy is available for the taking. People who take advantage of emotional resources naturally gravitate toward those who allow it. Without clear boundaries, you may find yourself constantly giving, adjusting, and accommodating, all while feeling more and more depleted. A lack of self-awareness can also make you vulnerable to these draining dynamics. If you don't recognize the patterns in your relationships, you may keep falling into the same exhausting situations without understanding why. You might tell yourself that you just have bad luck with people, but in reality, certain unconscious habits and beliefs are drawing these relationships to you. Understanding these patterns is the first step toward breaking them. Jung also emphasized the role of the shadow, the parts of ourselves that we suppress or refuse to acknowledge. Sometimes, what exhausts us most in others is actually a reflection of something we have rejected in ourselves. If someone's neediness drains you, ask yourself whether you have denied your own need for support. If someone's anger overwhelms you, consider whether you have suppressed your own ability to express anger in a healthy way. The things that irritate us most in others often reveal aspects of ourselves that we are unwilling to face. Once you recognize why energy-draining relationships keep showing up in your life, the next step is learning how to protect yourself. One of the most powerful tools is self-awareness. Pay close attention to your energy levels after interacting with different people. Which relationships leave you feeling exhausted? What specific behaviors trigger that depletion? Keeping a journal of these experiences can help you see patterns that you might not have noticed before. Setting clear boundaries is another essential step. Jung believed that healthy psychological development requires a strong sense of self. Without firm boundaries, your energy can be easily drained by those who demand more than you can give. Learning to say no without guilt is a crucial skill. Simple phrases like, "I can't take that on right now," or "I need to think about that before deciding," can protect you from being overwhelmed. Boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about ensuring that your relationships are healthy and balanced. Another way to protect yourself is by actively managing your energy. Jung was fascinated by meditation and other Eastern practices, which he saw as powerful techniques for directing and conserving energy. Developing habits that restore and replenish you is key. Meditation, time in nature, creative activities, and even movement-based practices like yoga or exercise can help you clear emotional clutter and maintain your vitality. Spending time with people who uplift and energize you is just as important as limiting time with those who drain you. Perhaps the most transformative step is doing the inner work Jung called shadow integration. When you acknowledge and accept the disowned parts of yourself, you become less reactive to them in others. If you no longer reject your own vulnerability, you won't be so drained by needy individuals. If you embrace your right to assert yourself, you won't be overwhelmed by people who try to control you. This process isn't about achieving perfection. It's about becoming whole, allowing yourself to experience the full range of human emotions without being controlled by them. Energy exchange is a natural part of every relationship, but it should be balanced over time. If you consistently feel drained after seeing someone, your body and psyche are sending you an important message. Ignoring that message only leads to further exhaustion and resentment. Recognizing these dynamics empowers you to make different choices, choosing relationships that nourish rather than deplete you, setting boundaries that protect your emotional resources, and ultimately cultivating a sense of wholeness within yourself. As Jung famously said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." By becoming more conscious of the underlying psychological patterns in your relationships, you gain the power to transform them. The more self-aware you become, the less you will attract or tolerate relationships that drain your energy. Instead, you'll find yourself naturally drawn to connections that are reciprocal, uplifting, and truly fulfilling. If you've ever experienced energy-draining relationships, take a moment to reflect. Have you noticed any recurring patterns? What strategies have helped you protect your energy? Share your thoughts, and remember, your energy is precious, and you have every right to protect it.